it must be made clear that there is no such thing, no such person, no such entity as an ego. There are no big egos, there are no small egos, there's no average egos, there simply is no ego. Ego is not a person. Ego is not a thing. Ego is nothing to do with greatness or smallness. Ego has nothing to do with inferiority or superiority. Ego has nothing to do with boasting. There's no such thing as a big or small ego. It's a myth. It's been a myth ever since ego was created, as it were. How it came about, don't know. Someone said, you've got a big ego. Someone's told me you've got a big ego. Someone's told me that person over there's got a big ego. Another person will say, he's got a very small ego, an inferiority complex. He needs to be a stronger ego. Some people say ego. I say ego. And the world, the general layman, the general public, listen to these authorities. Ego and id. Is that Freud? I don't know when the first word, when ego was first mentioned. Let's have a look. See what the definition of ego is. So I'm going into the search engine. New tab. Ego. See what the definition of ego is. And he's been egotistical. That implies he wasn't being egotistical before he became egotistical. What is ego? Psychology today. The ego is the part of you that is engaged in self-justification. A part of you. Ego is a part. Ego is only a part. How big a part? How much can it be of the part? It certainly couldn't be 100%, otherwise it wouldn't be a part. Humans live in a context of justification and question-answer dynamics. The ego can be viewed as the mental organ of justification. We have an organ of justification. The ego has both cognitive and motivational functions to justify the self. So the self has something to do with ego, but ego justifies the self. The ego is superior to the self, small s self this is. So my ego justifies. Understanding the ego can help people avoid conflicts that arise from ego dynamics. So you and I have ego dynamics. The most basic meaning of the word ego is that it refers to I. So every time I say the word I am a musician. If I say the word I more times than you, does that mean I've got a big ego? if every sentence has the word I like this, I want to do this, I don't like you, I want this, da 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 da. Another related definition of the ego has to do with being self-centered or egotistical. We get the term narcissism from the Greek myth of Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection. We sometimes will describe narcissists. So narcissists have big egos. So it's something you have. You aren't an ego, according to this. You have an ego. Which part of you has the ego? Here it says there are at least two interrelated parts of the ego. One part is that it enables self-reflective awareness and the capacity to justify one's actions to self and others. In this regard, it relates to the concept of the person. I suppose that's when we are always defending ourselves, justifying ourselves. This is, some scholars define a person as an entity that can self-reflect and give accounts for their actions. And it is clear that the cognitive portion of the ego is closely connected to this ability. But as the concept of egotism suggests, there is also the motivating portion of the ego. The motivating portion. Imagine a rather narcissistic man at the bar who makes a pass at a woman, but gets rebuffed, and he returns to his friends, and they ask how it went, and he replies, "She's into me, but for now is playing hard to get." Which means that he thinks a lot of himself. And so on. So what is the ego defending? The ego tries to maintain a consistent, justifiable place in the world. It's this image. This image is what they say the ego is defending. Anyway, before we go on, and before I tell you what ego is, the truth, that which isn't ego, in my book, is full, is a body mind. That which isn't ego is a body mind. Here we are, body mind, and your body mind, and your body mind. That's full of energy, full of life, full of love and intimacy and delight and happiness, represented like the open hand. The open hand is just so free. That's not ego. It's one's inherent and natural, I should say, it's the body-mind's inherent and natural disposition. It's normal to be absolutely, if you like, childlike, full of energy and love, ecstatic, with the voice being very expressive, with hands being very expressive and creative. And the body is full of life. That is not ego. That's not even an entity. It's not even a body-mind. It's the disposition of the body-mind. Are you understanding? And it's ego that prevents this body-mind from being absolutely full of energy, love, happiness, ecstasy, joy, delight, intimacy, giving, generosity, service. And also there's a sense of stillness, peace. and a sense of this expressive expression that can be taught very quietly or loud. Won't be too loud because of my neighbours. This expression is not ego. What I would like to say is not I am being happy, but this body-mind is being happy. That's the crux of the matter. It's not I being happy. It's the body-mind being full of happiness, joy, delight, intimacy. I say full. It just is. It's not full. It's a living organism. Full of, there's that word full. It's living. It's life. Now, how can I stop this hand from being creative? By holding it tight, by clenching it, by preventing it from being active. That tightness, that stress, that tension, that holding on, that clenching, that is ego. It's the self-contraction that is done within the body-mind, which is suffocating God, real God. This is God. This energy, this light, this love, this happiness, this joy, this intimacy, this wonderment, this happening is real God. It's the disposition of God. It's not in the head. It's not imaginary. It's not a myth. It's nothing to do with knowledge. It simply is. Let me say it again. It's nothing to do with knowledge. It's an allowance. No self-contraction. There's no self-consciousness in the open hand disposition. There is self-consciousness when there's self-contraction. There's no anxiety or fear in this open hand disposition. There is plenty of anxiety, plenty of tension, plenty of stress and fear when there is this self-contraction. Why we do the self-contraction, I do not know. I just don't know. But that is at the root of self-consciousness. It's at the root of irritability. It's at the root of frustration. It is at the root of fear, anxiety, tension, stress, displeasure, unhappiness, suffering, separativeness, imagination, and is not necessary. That is ego, the self-contraction, not the results. Ego is this initial self-contraction. Once again, I use this analogy, pinching my skin. The results are what one can see, the discoloration of the skin, the pain that is felt, the tension, the tightness in the skin. That is all the result of the pinch. No pinch, it immediately vanishes. No more pain, no more discoloration. Maybe a slight blemish, that'll soon go. That tightness, that contraction, activity, dwelling on yourself, being narcissistic, that is ego, and it's not necessary. So once again, ego is an activity, not an entity. you contracting? What are the results of your self-contraction right now? Once you are sensitized to the self-contraction, then you can do the counter-egoic practice of devotion. Because devotion devotion counters the self-contraction. Devotion to that which is already happiness. For me, it's devotion to my chosen Ishta, which is Adidar Sambhaj. By falling in love, it counters the self-contraction. It really does. It's an immediate surrendering of that egoic activity, that clenched fist disposition vanishes in this devotion of already happiness. Realizing this is personal self-activity, self-doing. So the true spiritual practitioner is countering this activity by turning away from it and not dramatizing it. So before the self-contraction can make or create fear, anxiety, doubt, boredom, discomfort, before those results happen, one turns away from it. And the self-contraction just simply vanishes mysteriously in this devotional practice of turning to that which is already happiness, for me, in the form of Adidar Sambhaj. It's called divine communion. And that's what the true yogi is all about. It's just turning away, constantly turning away. It's a practice. It's the way out. It's a change of destiny from ego destiny to divine destiny. No more self-indulgence. In that God communion, Holy Communion, Divine Communion, one is blessed. Turn to that great lover, great friend. It counters this activity because the self-contraction cannot get rid of the self-contraction. The clenched fist cannot change the clenched fist disposition. Only grace. Turning your attention away from this and putting it on to the Guru, who changes darkness to light, which is the true meaning of the word Guru. Darkness to light. So once again, ego is not an entity. Ego is not the body-mind. Ego is not big or small. Ego is not a disposition. The self-contraction is ego. That activity is ego, which produces the clenched fist disposition. And the spiritual practitioner has realized that has his self-understanding and turns away to that which is greater, the open-handed disposition of energy, life, fullness, a quietness, a peacefulness, inherent, innate qualities of real God. Thank you for listening. See this in your own life. See that you are strangulating God, real God, life, joy, delight, intimacy. So you are always in relationship, no separation, no division. Just oneness with all that's arising. Pleasurable oneness with all that's arising. Thank you. Zoom, talk with me, converse with me. Share the little video. Do a thumbs up. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.